Welcome to Urban Legend Crypto. Yeah, you're going to want to mess with it.
Welcome to Urban Legend Crypto. Today we have a very interesting show for you. And as always, our guest and co-host, Mr. the one and only, the great Brett Jenny.
Thank you, Pedro. It's an honor to be here once again. We like to kid around this show, but today we are going to kind of start out on a lighthearted subject, a little urban myth, and who doesn't love urban myths? I think draws everybody in, and then kind of get to more serious stuff with which Pedro was mentioning right before the show started, which I was unaware of, and very, very interesting about the American dollar. So stick around for that. But first and foremost, Pedro, how was your past week? You busy?
I'm busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest, my brother. I don't know how I'm doing all this, but I'm doing it. I'm not getting as much sleep as I usually get, you know what I mean? But yeah.
You got to work a little bit harder for that real estate transaction these days, you know?
You do.
And the feds aren't doing us any favors, are they?
They're not. That whole thing is just very interesting. We're going to talk about the lowering of, the raising of the interest rates, the lowering of the dollar and all of that. But let's hear about that urban legend.
All right. So I'm always putzing around on the internet, more specifically YouTube. And, urban legends to me, you always hear things. Did we actually land on space? To extremes of what actually happened in 9/11, everything in between. So kind of on a lighthearted gesture of that, have you ever heard of the term 86?
Yeah, all the time.
86, right? I say that because...
Let's 86 that out of the contract, or whatever.
Yeah. And what made me start to think about that was I have a client whose family's lived in Vegas since the 1940s. Like literally they're probably one of the first families that live in Las Vegas.
Okay.
So the whole history of Las Vegas and everything connected with it, they're familiar with it and been some shape or form with it, right? Mm-hmm. So she was telling me a few different stories, how her dad was, the leader of the Boy Scouts, but then running money for the mob and
wow.
Just typical Vegas activities back in the day before corporations got into play. So I went home, I started thinking about things, and the term 86, I've always heard the term 86 referring to something to do with Las Vegas mob. So I looked into it and come to find out 86, a few different connotations of where it might have come from. The exact origin isn't specifically known, but number one is Chumley's Restaurant. And that was a historic speakeasy in New York City during the Prohibition era. And the bar's address was 86 Bedford Street. If they knew the cops were going to be coming in and busting it, they would say 86 your drinks. And that's what that meant. The other one was a naval term that was the context of 80 could refer to 80 proof liquor on board, and 86 would mean to dispose of that liquor. So I take it they weren't supposed to have liquor on board, and they were carrying the liquor on board. 80 proof liquor was like their of choice. But the one that I found most interesting was the theory term 86 that's related to the mob in Las Vegas basically meant that if somebody was in the casino and they wanted to get rid of them, or someone else in the mob that they wanted to get rid of them, they would say you need to 86 them, which meant 8 miles out, 6 feet deep. Oh. And that sounds a little more badass that way, doesn't it? But yeah, so basically back in the day, urban legend has it that the mob said, yo, 86 them. 86 meant take them 8 miles out and put them 6 feet deep. And we can imagine all the bodies that are actually in all reality out there in the middle of our desert right now.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, the city keeps on growing. We're going to discover, look at Lake Mead. Lake Mead's water went down to a all-time low, and we start finding bodies in barrels.
That's crazy.
Welcome to Vegas, baby.
Yeah. The one that I liked there, bar address was 86, and when the police were about to raid the place, the bartender would allegedly tell the customers to 86 their drinks, meaning to hide and get rid of their alcohol beverage to avoid trouble.
Yep. 86 it.
I use that all the time.
I know.
That's
and isn't that funny when you're like, where do these phrases come from? Like, do you know where the phrase red tape comes from?
Where?
The phrase red tape.
Where's it come from?
I need to go, but in order to do that, I need to go through all this red tape. What that is referring to is back during the Civil War days, troops were getting paid to be in the Civil War. And when the Civil War ended, for the troops to be able to get their money, they had the money that they were giving to be paid for doing the war. The money was wrapped in red tape. But they had to go through all these channels, and they had to go through all these loopholes and all these different things just to get the money that was supposed to be paid for them for fighting in the Civil War. Civil War ends, they go to get their money. They have to basically go through all these loopholes and conditions to get their money. And when they finally got their money, it was wrapped in red tape.
That's a good one too, man. I like that. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I could go on those things all day long, man. So anyways, let's get some serious stuff.
All right. Well, boys and girls, what's going on now with the dollar? From what I can tell in this index, the dollar has been gyrating like crazy. You got Reuters talking about an article that they presented and explaining how the dollar is going up and down about 3.86%. What's kind of crazy, if you go to Yahoo Finance, it's showing there in, can you read that, Brett, right here?
Yeah, so you're looking at May 31st, basically the beginning of July. The dollar was $104.01.
Right. And
I'm sorry, it was yeah.
Yeah, and if you look here, you've got a low of 98.98 in July 19th. Now, I don't know about you, but 4 to 9 is 5% drop.
In not even 3 weeks.
Yeah, that is absolutely insane.
We're talking about the American dollar.
Yeah,
the dollar currency for the world.
So much for having a strong currency argument, right?
But Bitcoin can drop 3 or 4%, Pedro.
I know, and it's a tragedy.
I know, but that just goes to show, for example, that's even what's considered the most stable currency in the world right now.
Well, we are definitely the most stable currency.
Yeah.
Yeah, we own the printers.
Exactly right. So you're talking about the most stable currency in the world right now, and it still can fluctuate 5% within 3 weeks.
Oh, that's crazy.
Maybe because it's not really backed by anything. But.
Well, here's the thing: it's also being severely manipulated.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
absolutely.
if you look at that, one of the things that I found interesting in that Reuters article, investors have been betting on a turn lower in the dollar for months, with short positions more than doubling over the months to July 7th. According to the data, the community features trading commissions, although they remain far off the levels of 2021. Against a weakening dollar, the euro touched a 16-month peak to 1.1245 in Asian hours before floating at 1.129. Now, guys, this is a Reuters article dated, one second, guys, July 14th. And then soon after, Shazam, right? We've got 99 point something. So what's crazy here is in this, it says, against a weakening dollar, the euro touched a 60-month peak, right? Investors have been betting on a lower dollar. And then in the near term, we have a slight bit of dollar strength, but it remains to be seen on July 26th, date of the Fed meeting. If the Fed can convince traders, it will hike twice more and not just once. I wonder if that was happening.
Days. Let's go to the days and see where it's at.
Yeah, U.S. dollars gain. So if you guys go to Reuters, July 27th, 2023, U.S. dollar gains as rate cuts doubts surface. And here we go. The dollar rose against a basket of major peers on Tuesday after better than expected U.S. data and a dovish European Central Bank forced investors to reconsider the assumption of the Federal Reserve will pause interest rate hikes. So there's an assumption that the Federal Reserve will pause the hikes. The U.S. economy grew faster than expected in the second quarter as the labor market's resilience unpinned consumer spending, while business boosts investments in equipment and potential keeping a recession at bay. Meanwhile, the number of people receiving benefits in the initial week aid, a proxy of hiring, yada, 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 the assumption QE that tells that there is still considerable two-ways risk in the incoming U.S. data, and the market will probably need to reassess its views that the Fed doesn't need to tighten again. The dollar index measure currency, 6 major peers rose to 0.682 to a 1.770, while the euro is down 0.86 at 1.098. The ECB lifted its deposit rates historical high Thursday and keeps the option and yada, yada, yada. And all this is still a case. The U.S. economy is looking resilient on various different fronts. I mean, are they freaking kidding me right now saying that? So the Fed raises the rates. The U.S. dollar is going down. They just said in the previous article that if they raise the rates, if there's doubts of raising the rates, then there's going to be an issue, right? And now they don't raise. There's doubts about the raise of the rates, and they're calling it good news. I mean, in two separate articles, they're contradicting each other, don't you think?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a game they play, man. It's all a game they play.
So, Brett, here's what I find interesting. You see that Reuters article that was done, that the first one I just read, that was done a couple weeks ago. It says, in the near term, we may see a slight bit of dollar strength, but it remains to be seen on July 26th, data Fed meeting, if the Feds can convince traders it will hike twice more and not just once. Said, okay. So what he's saying there is they're basically stuck if the Fed can convince them that they're going to increase the rate. So now, if we go to today's article on the 27th, it's saying that the Fed looks like it's not. It's going to be stuck at this rate for the foreseeable future. Now, of course, they're speculating because they don't know what the Fed's going to do, right?
So they gave them one rate hike, but at this point, not two.
Yeah, they gave them one. We did the one rate hike,
yesterday.
But they're saying here in this article that there may not be another rate hike because of all the good news in the economy. I don't see the freaking good news. I don't see.
See, I don't either. I don't either. And I'm watching CNBC yesterday, and I think it was yesterday was the record for the most consistent gain for the stock market for days in a row, and a very long time, if not forever. And it's amazing how think about it, man. The average home before all this COVID nonsense would probably be $350 right now, not $425. Groceries are double. Gas is double. How the hell are these people pushing up a stock market that's had the most percentage gains consistently days in a row during all this? Well, let's delve into that for a second. What is it, like 85 or 90% of the stock market is owned and traded by a very small select group of people, correct? Or a very small select group of wealth. So it's basically a game they play with each other, throwing their money back and forth, saying, I give this value and I give this value. But it's each other just giving each other values on things. Playing their game that the average man's not going to be in. Because think about that. How are these people, I mean, in a game that's played by a small select percent of wealth, has had the most consistent days in a row for gains, but you and I are looking at everything around us and nothing's cheaper. It's not getting cheaper. Do you see anything's getting cheaper?
Nope.
I don't. Where's the disconnect? I mean, if that's not proof right there of the dichotomy between the select few and the rest of us, I don't know what is. That's not even the world that any of us know. Consistent gains every single day as a record? I mean, I don't think I've ever lived a point in my life where you have things costing more than they ever have in your life. And then the government or economy or the people of the economy saying, hey, it's all good. We're fine. We're just making money as usual. I've never seen that before. And we're just supposed to say, okay, cool. We're fine with that. We don't notice anything. I will not own, I will rent, and I will like it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Here's
capitalism.
Here's some conspiracy for you, brother, based on what you just said.
Since we're kind of spinning off on things.
We're having fun.
Yeah.
All right, here it is. If what you're saying is true, then the 3% who own all of the stocks in the world, okay, are definitely right now controlling the narrative. That's to say that 97%-ish of the world population does not own stocks or bonds, or at least not a very big significant amount as an individual person. And the Vanguard Group and the like, BlackRock and all those guys, they're definitely controlling the narrative, in my opinion. So why is Reuters right now going back and forth and contradicting each other? And I will explain the why real quick. And the why is this simple. Who owns all of the press? Who owns all of the media in this world? And that media is what is controlling the narrative that you're saying. So if they have most of the money slushing around and they can make it look good, and then they have control of the media saying There's nothing to see here. That's the biggest gaslighting event that I think our world's ever seen. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. We're all good, Brett. Don't sweat it. So what do you have to say about that, brother?
When they own all the information, they can bend it all they want. That's what I think. Who's there to stop them? Right? So people in general will always get away with as much as they can for as long as they can until someone stops them. What's the oldest saying? Give someone an inch and they want to take a mile. Why do you think that saying exists? You know, it's the same thing why there's laws in place. Let's break it down to a more basic narrative, which are, okay, let's take, for example, lending laws or real estate laws or anything to do with some sort of business laws that are in place of what's illegal and what you can't do, stock trading, all that different things, right? Well, it's like anything in life. Only 10% of the population are criminals. The other 90% of people in life, we have no problem obeying the laws and living our life and minding our own business. So it's kind of the same thing in businesses, right? Personally, I don't really care. I mean, I'm affected in different ways, but it doesn't really matter to me what laws are enacted for real estate or for lending or whatever it is, because I don't plan on breaking the law to begin with, nor do you plan on breaking the law to begin with. So those don't apply to us, right? We don't really care, but why are they in place? Because there are some people who will. And those are the people where, as long as you let them keep going, they will go and go and go and go unless there's something in place.
Well, I don't know how old the people are watching, but I remember Welcome Back, Carter. And I think that hairdo was real popular in the 70s.
Hello, Mr. Carter.
Yeah. But anyway, so let's go through this. So our boy Sam Bankman-Fried has been released of campaign finance charge dropped, lessening trial's political focus. And this was Reuters July 27th, 2023. And it's basically saying that although he has other charges, they're not going to go after him for
campaign finance fraud.
Campaign finance fraud. And this is the why. Thank you. Let me read this. Jurors have a visceral reaction to campaign finance charges. Campaign finance charges are crimes on the public, and juries themselves are indirect victims, he said. Victims of other charges by comparison are consumers of or investors in Alameda or FTX, right? So from what I'm seeing here, we have the political elite saying, no way can you do this. We accepted the money. We have committed no crimes. He was a donor, and that's how we saw it. We did zero for the money and all that. So you've got to let this go. Sounds good on the surface, though, doesn't it?
Hey, I can paint pretty good stories too, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that's truth, but, I'm a great storyteller, so.
Right. And then you get our boy Gary Gensler, right, who has been meeting up with this guy I don't know how many times prior to all this.
And he's a solid moral person.
Yes, and he has done nothing but, not introduce, this guy to this. Oh, and I forgot about his family. Weren't his parents involved with the political fund of the Democratic Party? So,
ironically, Sam Bankman-Fried's parents are Stanford law professors who are huge campaign donors to the Bidens and Democrats.
Right. So,
not to get political, it's just the facts.
Yeah. So basically, we have a guy that is an upstanding citizen that just donated to these political entities, peoples, and he expected nothing in return.
Nothing. That's the way it works in Hollywood.
I was wondering about this.
Speaking of that, I saw an interview. I wish I could quote the source of who the interview was, and I'm sure people will hold me to this, but basically they came out and were able to prove that you're literally able to get a politician's attention and get them to start working with you on things, or you're in favor of whatever your campaign that you're trying to that you want to get accomplished to them, with as basically a campaign donation of $10,000 or more.
Oh yeah.
So think about that.
Big deal.
For $10,000, you can basically get. I mean, no wonder if you're a multi-million-dollar company, not even a multi-million-dollar company, for $10,000, I can get things passed or get you to get things to my favor for ruling. I mean, that's insane. So he literally donated millions in some shape or form. Absolutely insane, But I'm sure there were no strings attached to that, right?
No. There was no strings attached.
I mean,
that would mean that our political system is corrupt, Brett.
But things are done for free? I don't understand.
No. You would have to infer that people would actually receive money to do favors, and then there's something called lobbyists. I wonder what they do all day.
It's kind of the same thing of how senators are allowed to trade stock.
Right.
And so I just saw a bill introduced bipartisan bill with Josh Hawley, who is the Republican representing it, and I forgot who the Democrat was, but it was a Democrat. And they're both basically saying not only should senators and congresspeople not be able to trade, but even their spouses or even anything to do with their trusts on that. Be based on the sight of the facts that, and you've mentioned this before in the past, the average senator has a 17% better gain trading record than the NASDAQ. 17% better than the market. I mean, you don't need to be a genius to understand that these people are politicians, they're not traders. How on earth are they trading better than Warren Buffett? And I'm actually surprised that they've got to this point, because it's usually the people in the system that benefit the most that are the least to change it. So I kind of give them credit on that, because if you're benefiting the most, what is your motivation to change it?
I mean, you would have to infer things like justice is just us, right? And you would have to say that
Clever.
very good trading principles from the spouses of like Nancy Pelosi, or her spouse Paul was just this absolute genius. I think they're worth over $127 million.
It's amazing.
Right now.
I mean,
you know, there
is a lot of trading videos on YouTube now that you can take and learn. So I'm sure it was honest. I'm sure it was honest work, Pedro. Honest work. Politicians, honest work.
Well, I think that's an oxymoron when you say politicians and honesty in the same sentence. But whatever. Here's the thing. Why they don't have term limits, why they don't stop the ability for these politicians to make gains on the inside information they have because they're sitting on approval panels, is beyond me.
That's where it all starts, is the term limits. I mean, that really will resolve the rest of the problems, or most of them. Yeah. Or get right to the root of them, won't it?
Right.
Term limits. We have it for the president. Why do we not have that for Congress and Senate?
Yeah.
Because, again, in order to make that happen, because it's not in the Constitution, in order to make that happen, you're going to need everybody who benefits from it to vote on that. Good luck, bro.
Yeah. Here's what bothers me. How can you get elected for anything anymore, individually? And the answer to that is, even to go into a city councilman's position right now, you have to spend a few $1 million. So where are you going to get the money? You're going to get it from these corporations or these philanthropists, et cetera, that have strings attached. And that's just it. I think it was George Soros who helped finance the DA's elections throughout the whole of the United States. And he would endorse or put his money to the people that were the most radical so that he can get his agendas passed, right? So it's not like Nancy, Soros, and all these guys are breaking, quote unquote, the laws that they helped pass, because that's not the case. What is the case is that they're implementing those laws, so that way they're not breaking those laws in the first place, and that no one can come in and actually do business. I'll give you an example. You can't, like, they're going after crypto, right? But in crypto, for an exchange to get approved with the SEC to be able to have trading on their words, not mine, a legitimate platform, trading securities, right, would require an exorbitant amount of money that most of these startups don't have. So it's what it is these laws are in place to limit the competition. Rockefeller said it best. He didn't invent it. This has been true throughout all of time. Competition is a sin, and that is their anthem. So as soon as something comes out that is something they can control and it's viable, they're going to put all their money behind it, change any laws they can, so that way they are the manipulating like monopoly guys. So they own all the rights to it. So I see that playing out in crypto with the SEC and Gary meeting with Sam Bankman-Fried, with all the crypto banks going under. All this is a massive play to control all of the crypto sphere. And the reason is simple. They're going to profit from it. They're going to change the laws so that no one else can play, and then they can keep their worlds running and their agendas going. Because look, that they did that throughout time. Automobiles, let's go back even further. When Tesla invented, not invented, but I think he stumbled back onto what you can do with electricity, right? All right. Well, they
harness electricity.
Right. So they wanted to put a meter on it. And the reason they want to do that is because they needed the money to push their agendas.
Yep.
Well, then you've got gasoline, right? So they can control that oil commodity, et cetera, et cetera. But we didn't really need it because we had electrical cars 100 years ago, right? That now is the rage because of Tesla. So you look at all of the big trains and everything, they're controlled by very few people. So they see this exciting new industry, right, that they didn't even think it was a thing, right, until it became something they could profit from. And now what do you got? You got all kinds of regulations. Oh, we need to protect the public. All you have to do is say, instead of public, is say, we need to protect our people, our cronies, our insiders.
I've never known any form of powers that have easily given up their power. Nobody that holds the power ever wants to or is willing to give up their power. So you have to either take it by force or you have to do it slowly and cleverly. That's what I like about Bitcoin is it's introducing that whole alternative method non-violently. Think about that for a second. But to get back onto everything else, them controlling every system and controlling the infrastructure, and that's really what it's about, is getting inside what new technology is coming out and now transferring your power from one infrastructure, and you want to be the powerful one in that new infrastructure. And what they do, I can tell you this, the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Oh, that's 100%, brother.
You know?
I'm talking about the devil. Let's talk about your one of your favorite coins and mine, Chainlink. So let's talk about Chainlink.
So interesting enough, we've had a discussion in the past about, I've said, I love Ripple technology. I think it's great technology. They were ahead of their time. Good luck to them. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, no matter what rulings they get, I believe every bank is going to have their own blockchain, and they're not going to use, I should say, put it this way, they're not going to use someone else's blockchain. Why? Because why would you pay someone else's fees when you can create your own? So if anybody knows what Chainlink is, the coin is Link. They are an oracle, okay? And they do many different things, but one of the essential things that they do is they take real world data that currently exists right now in Web3, and they convert it onto the blockchain, onto Web3, I'm sorry. So they take the current info in Web2 right now, and they pull it from Web2, and they take that info and they convert that info and data into Web3 onto the blockchain. So remember, Pedro, back in the day when CDs first came out?
Yeah.
And before that, everybody had cassette tapes.
Right.
And remember, there were, we all knew those people that would say, for $100 or for $50, I will record all of your tapes onto CDs.
Yep.
And now you don't have to go out and buy all these new CDs. But there was a whole process you had to do to record the data from the old and convert it to the new data. That's essentially what they do as an oracle. But they take the information that exists right now on the internet and they automatically pull it from the internet and automatically convert it into Web3 onto the blockchain. That's primarily what they do. So one of the things that they're doing right here is, so basically Chainlink's co-founder wants to bring trillions of dollars into crypto from banks. What he's basically saying is by the year 2030, I believe it's a $30 trillion market, or I'm sorry, I believe it's a $26 trillion market that they believe of assets that will be tokenized. And what that is basically taking real world assets like paintings, cars, homes, sports memorabilia, whatever it is, things of ownership, and it's taking the digital rights of it and it's putting proof of those digital rights on the blockchain. Okay? So they're saying the process of that is now you've got all these assets, trillions of dollars worth of assets in Web 2. It's going to be converted into Web 3, and now you've got trillions of dollars on assets on Web 3, represented by the real life value of them that exist right now. So they're saying once that starts happening, banks are going to realize how much money is involved with using blockchain and tokenization. It's just going to be a trillions and trillions of dollar market. And they're going to realize that. And once they realize that, banks aren't going to want to pay for someone else's blockchain. They're not going to want to have to pay someone else's fees. They're going to want to be able to use their own blockchain. So what Chainlink has created, in a sense, is it's like an app store, but for blockchain. So as you go right now to the app store and you download this app for this and download that app for that, they'll have the same thing, essentially an app store, but for blockchains, so that banks can just go on there and create their own and use their own blockchain. Ripple, great job, great court win. You really helped out crypto overall. I believe so. Don't get me wrong, but it comes down to that thing at the end, which is, and don't get me wrong, I still believe that Ripple will be used. I just think that banks are going to use their own blockchain at the end of the day. Why would they not? Why would they pay someone else fees for something every single day that they can just make themselves and save themselves that extra money and have full control over it?
Stage 3 emerges when banks start the development of financial protocol on their proprietary chains, essentially mirroring the contemporary DeFi landscape, but within a tighter regulated framework. This is where Nazarov reckons Chainlink will come in. In the third stage, he says, they're inevitably going to be dealing with us because we power the vast majority of DeFi. They're going to need market data. They're going to need identity data. They're going to need automation. They're going to need automation. They're going to need functions. All the stuff we make, they're going to need. He said, I know that because I've already seen a lot of the designs, and the designs are basically copying the DeFi protocols we already power. Nerzov also poised that stable coins could serve as the entry point. He found that Society General developed He found it notable that Society General developed a stablecoin and put it on a blockchain. He anticipated that the future, all banks will introduce their own stables coins that will operate across chain. Neros predicted that these banks might choose CCIP as they will want to stablecoins used at as many places as possible. Should banks build private blockchains complete with their own stablecoins in DeFi protocols, and pressing questions emerge? Will these chains operate in isolation, or will they connect to other spectrums of the blockchain, possibly through technologies like CCIP? Nez believes that the two worlds will eventually merge, but only once regulations have evolved sufficiently. Look, here's my 2 cents. I think he's right on a lot of points. I don't think the banks need them. When you can print just about anything you want, it's easy to hire a bunch of people that are working on current chains and triple their salaries to come up with the chain they need. What banks can't do is they can't come up with innovation. They have to steal it or buy it or bankrupt it. All right. So as this young industry is growing up and they're coming up with new designs and new ways of doing things, they're going to want to come in and scoop up as much talent as they can. For example, Facebook was struggling, right? So they bought Instagram. Facebook was struggling and they bought WhatsApp, right? So these big conglomerates are going to try to buy or steal or take or copy anything they can.
But the tools that they need to use comes from Chainlink. To me, that's my interpretation of it. Just like Apple. Why does everyone have to go to the Apple store? Because Apple has the underlying infrastructure. If you want to have a business online, basically Apple, you have to go through Apple and you have to pay Apple to use their tools to create your own infrastructure, to create your own product. But the tools you need to create that product come from Apple. That's why they're such a bully with their fees, because they know that. They're like, anything that you want to do on the internet, in a sense, for a business or whatever it is, you need to use our tools to make that happen. To me, that's what that says, which is, we know banks are going to want to make their own blockchain. We know they're going to want to use all this other technology. And that's fine if they want to hire the best people and do that. We expect them to. But like, by your own words, what banks don't do is innovation. That's what Chainlink does. Chainlink provides the tools for that innovation that all the banks are going to have to use. So one way or another, they have to, Chainlink is going to be the gatekeeper for the tools of it, just like Apple is for the Apple Store. That's what I interpreted it. But.
Why do blockchains need oracles? Oracles themselves are not the source of real-world information. Instead, they gather it from existing databases and communicate the data in reliable ways to the blockchain. The relationship between the oracles and the blockchain is reciprocal. Oracles can receive on-chain data to distribute external applications like banking apps. So it's like a router, in a sense. Okay, so if you look here, you'll see in the same article, it talks about the problem with centralized oracles, okay, and the like. They describe how centralized oracles solve the problem, and all the details that you guys would love to see. It's a great little article.
I think people should go to the Chainlink white paper and read it.
Yeah,
I mean, you'll be like, man, these guys are onto something.
Yeah. now there are many types of oracles that are on the market right now. So, you guys could do your own homework. I like Chainlink. Brett likes Chainlink. Although I'm not in 100% agreement with this Norvov, or whatever his name is, and he thinks that maybe they're going to be more needed than he's thinking. I don't think so.
That could be true too.
Yeah, I think I think there's going to be there's going to be development. Maybe they'll buy them out. Maybe they'll just take them over. Maybe they'll team up with them. Whatever the case may be. Algorand has gotten all kinds of attention because they think that Algorand is going to be the oracle or the chain that the banks are going to use. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but oracles and bridges.
It's an open world at this point, man. I mean, like all these things that I'm saying or I'm interpreted with, that's just my...
Algorand, is a great example. They got Akito, born on Algorand. Akito is an open cross-chain bridge protocol that enables fast, secure, and low-cost asset transfers between chains. I mean, you've got a lot of things that are coming down the pike. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we do need oracles and we need bridges. But I will tell you this, Brett, whatever wins, whatever comes up, it's going to be very hard for whoever has the best technology to fight these banks. They're going to want the control. And they're going to do it in the name of saving the public and helping the public. How do you think in 1911 the Federal Reserve even got their freaking charter again? All right? Because they created a false depression. And then they took over with the pretense that they were going to fix the depression, right? And then what happened? It got worse.
It will, that struggle has always existed and always will. I mean, there's no clear-cut answer and direct answer that solves that, and here's a clear-cut path of what needs to happen. You're always going to have that struggle between those that have and those that don't. And like anything else, those that have don't want to give it up, and those that don't want to have what those that have. There's a lot of different things and circumstances in between there that come into play, but overall, you're always going to have that battle. I think no matter what you have that's invented in the world that's for the people and for the consumer. I mean, we talk about Bitcoin, it's for the people and it's decentralization, all these things, and it gives unbanked people a bank account and all those things. That doesn't take away the intricacies of the world that already exists, the complications of the world that already exist, right? Those that have that leg up and control everything, how do those people, how do you take that from them? Two ways, non-violently or violently. And if you can't do it violently, if you're going to do it non-violently, number one, good luck. And number two, it's probably going to take a minute.
That was well said. I'm not going to add to it. I'm just going to give you an example. There's been hydrogen cars. There's been cars that run on all kinds of different ways, water, whatever, steam, whatever. And they're all shut down. From what I'm guessing, because I don't know, there's been cures for things, okay? And they've been suppressed. So any technology that is going to interfere with their bottom line is either going to be embraced and taken over by them, or it's going to be suppressed. And I don't know if you've ever seen that website, the Dead Scientist website, where you go and you could see all the dead scientists.
Brilliant dead scientists that were died mysteriously or something?
Yeah.
Really? I got to check that out.
Yeah, there's this website that has a bunch of they track all of these brilliant
I'm
scientists.
sure it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, just all right. Well, thanks for coming on to Urban Legend Crypto. Brett and I trying to, share something with you that we find important on a weekly basis. Have a good one.
Honest men and non-honest time.